Today we are touching on MLB the Show franchise. Programming note, I do want to let y'all know I will talk about other games at some point in time. As a matter of fact, if you don't know, EA College Football is going to be dropping, I believe, a trailer or something this coming week. It is May 13th as of this recording. They're supposed to be dropping something, I want to say the 16th or at some point in the month of May, as stated by Electronic Arts. With that being said, I have 10 things that I find pretty sucky about MLB The Show free agency. As you already know, free agency is a great way to quickly improve your teams, assuming you have the funds to do so, with players that have earned their stripes from through the minors into the majors, and they have the freedom to choose where they take their career. You'll end up, at least in 2024, in the offseason, with options like Corbin Burns, Juan Soto, Shane Bieber, Alex Bregman, Max Fried, Pete Alonso, Willy Adames, and guys like Anthony Santander, and many others. These are in no particular order. We start with number one. CPU teams do not extend their top players, or at least their top young players, pre-arbitration, unlike a team like the Brewers just did with Jackson Chourio, their outfielder, like the Seattle Mariners did with Julio Rodriguez, Padres did with Fernando Tatis Jr. You won't see this, and as you know, the Braves are probably the number one team to pull off that kind of strategy. Is their top 7 or 8 players all were extended, including Matt Olson, who was traded for in the Freddie Freeman situation that didn't exactly go how probably anybody thought it would. Remember, Freddie Freeman wanted to stay, but he was getting an offer from the Dodgers, and honestly, I think both teams won in this. Nonetheless, Michael Harris also signed a long-term extension. Sean Murphy did as well, and so did Ozzie Albies. Now, you will not see this in MLB The Show 24, or any MLB The Show for that matter. I have kept track in a Google Sheet of the amount of players that are pre-arbitration that are eligible for an extension, which really it's anybody you've called up. And I've also decided to keep track of free agent guys that would be true free agents. So guys you won't have to deal with as far as arbitration is concerned, but they will be on the open market and you will be able to attempt to extend them after the World Series is over. In my research for spring training, the leading team with renewal arbitration players happened to be 34, and the least of all happened to be 15, those being the Miami Marlins and the LA Dodgers respectively. As far as having true free agents, or guys that will be true free agents by the end of the year, Seattle would end up with 1, and the New York Mets would have 11. So there'd be a lot of roster movement if the CPU goes about not re-signing their players. And the Mets happen to have like the second highest payroll in all of baseball. Looking around the league to see who actually extended at the end of spring training. In order to see all the guys who have signed, you have to go into the transactions menu and into completed, and then tab over to roster related. And this is the entire league. It is the end of spring training, and I can tell you right now, ain't nobody signed. Not one team signed any players. You can do this on your own. Go into franchise, select all 30 teams. When you jump into it, it'll give you all the options for where you can automate things, automate it, check it after the different phases, and you will 100% see ain't nobody getting extended in spring training. These are the only transactions I've found that involved any money. 25 different transactions for catchers, because the CPU only keeps but so many catchers, and they'll shuffle around A-ball, AA, AAA, majors, blah, 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 blah. And it seems like those are the only guys that ever get signed. You won't see a starting pitcher get signed. You won't see a position player get signed. No relievers, anything. This always seems to happen year one. This happens actually almost every single year. It's a little ridiculous and really plays on the fact that, well, CPU's roster management is pretty plain rice across the board. They pretty much all do the same thing and don't do the same thing. I scrolled through each team's exclusive free agents jotted down with the numbers. There are 184 exclusive rights free agents. Let's see how many of them are actually going to get signed. I felt like a bad game of Sesame Street, but out of the, I think I said 184 people that were exclusive rights free agents, 182 became free agents. 182. Now, I understand the counterpoint might be, well, that just means there'll be a lot of players in free agency. Yes? And why? It doesn't have to be that way. The CPU doesn't have to overturn itself for no apparent reason, especially if some of these guys are of actual quality. Your Juan Soto's, your top names, hell, even some of your guys in the 80s, in the 85 ranges, especially as relievers. If you've got a quality reliever, you should probably keep him. It just makes for a little bit too much turnover, maybe for my liking. I did do this simulation without any trades on, turned trades all the way off the slider, all the way down to 0. There was a re-signing, and I come to find out in the league rules, this is something you can do. It's just we can't do in MLB the Show. Jack Leiter did re-sign. He is a minor leaguer, so as soon as the regular season is over, you can actually start signing your minor leaguers. It's just something we can't do in the postseason because it'll probably throw off the game to try to figure all that out. Now, as a Yankee fan, if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure I do, Scott Boras is Juan Soto's agent. Now, we don't have any agents in the game. That would be great to see, but ain't no possible way Juan Soto was going to ask for 9 years, $206 million. He would wipe his behind and clog all the toilets in Yankee Stadium with the contract, or at least all the paperwork involved in the contract, then to re-sign for $200 million over 9 years. I feel like the players do not ask for nearly enough money. Now, this is the Yankees' offer. Let me see if, hypothetically speaking, as you can see, I'm on the A's tab, see what he is asking for and where his interest meter is. There's a whole lot on this screen that is just wrong, or at the very least doesn't make a ton of sense. Juan Soto did not have a phenomenal year. Take a look compared to some of the rest of his years. He'd range somewhere in about the high 20s range. You might get a 30-35 home run season from him, and he'll drive in at least 75 to 80 runs. And bat, let's be honest, it can fluctuate, but you know what he's paid for. The on-base percentage. Multiple years of at least 90 walks, which is something that a ton of guys don't do. Hell, he's got 3 straight over 100 walk seasons and a 95er. So teams should be wanting to pay for that. And pay for that in a guy that is only 26 years old. You're not going to find basically any 26-year-old players that are this high of a potential, that have the accolades that he does. Behind me is the 2020 batting title. I'm sure he's come very close in maybe some other years. And I really, really hate to say this because I find it kind of disgusting. He's a 93 overall. And I don't mean as I think he's too low. I just don't think that overall should really play a role in how much a guy should ask for. I think things like age, potential, fine if you want to go that route, within reason. This guy has played for several years, been a great young player in the league. The accolades, it doesn't show his World Series championship, though I don't know how much teams really put a dollar sign to that, though I would like to think that the fans, and maybe I'm completely overthinking this, but that's kind of the idea of this podcast. We got to get beyond the surface level of a lot of things in our franchise games, so I'm going to do it. But think of bringing in a young guy in his prime that has already been a world champion, that has played in a big market, that has played on teams that have had tons of talent around it, and let's be honest, Juan Soto has already stated he wants to stay. But I will touch on that a little more later. This ain't remotely enough money. It's bad enough that SDS basically has ignored the fact that there are, again, as I've stated, the last 2 or 3 years, at least 4 to 5 players right now, 2024, are making over the maximum amount that you can pay anybody in MLB the Show. The max is $40 million a year AAV. You can get that to be higher by just back paying or back loading the payout structure. How much is Ohtani? Let's be honest. Ohtani is really only making $2 million a year. Only making $2 million a year for the next 10 years. And unfortunately, SDS has absolutely jacked up his contract to only really reflect the fact that the AAV seems to be what matters more than his actual salary or what his deferred money is. I know you can't defer money in this game, and I'm pretty damn sure ain't no 99 overall player taking anywhere near $2 million. But Ohtani is a special circumstance as he decided to take that discount. I don't expect too many players to do that. This is definitely a special circumstance. I get why Ohtani decided to only want to get paid $2 million a year over the next decade and defer that money, because he basically did what Tom Brady did. He did what Tim Duncan has done. Two guys in two completely different sports, both with salary caps. He decided, no. I'll get my money when I'm done. I want as much talent on this team as possible. And as of the recording of this, Ohtani and Betts are basically neck and neck in the NL MVP race, on top of other guys like Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, who legitimately signed a true extension, is still not in the game. I don't know why. The ink is dry at this point. Like, we already know what the deal is. It's like 10 years, $130 million. Sure, some of that is deferred, I'm sure. Actually, it may not be. I still feel like guys are not asking for enough. Now, I can understand a guy taking less-ish if there's maybe a recruiting factor to it as far as trying to bring a player back. If there is a promise of bringing in more talent, they might want to make a little bit less to try to squeeze guys in under the luxury tax. But to be honest, I hate the luxury tax in this game being a cap. It is not a true cap. It doesn't freaking matter. Yes, I understand you can ignore budgets, but even then, at a certain point, nobody's going to want to do a trade with you. I think it's a glitch where teams will actually care about their budget, despite the fact nobody should be caring about their budget. You know, if there's a talent that you can bring in that can help you win, that should be first and foremost. But the CPU just doesn't seem to understand that. I'd understand if teams were trying to just make money and not really care all that much about spending money on talent, like, say, the Pirates had done for a while. The A's are known to do that. The Rays don't spend on basically anybody all that much. I think the highest contract they ever gave out, that guy is never going to see the light of day again. Give me one reason why I should sign this player back. He's a minor leaguer. He did not play at all. I have nothing to work with. Let's just completely ignore the fact that, yes, there are attributes and that's how this game basically operates. Say I couldn't even see any of this. How am I supposed to know what you did in the minors last year? Did you play in the minors last year? Were you in AAA? Were you in AA? Were you in single A? Were you injured? Why? Why is there no way to understand the player themselves and how well they've done outside of the attribute side? I mean, I would like to see something like a year-to-date progression. You can see how well a guy has gotten better in all these different attributes over the years. You done it before, SDS. I have the MLB the Shows to prove it. Because, listen, I do not want to rely on potential. Potential should be, hey, this is the league's consensus of where you could be overall-wise. And potential should not be the vehicle driving a player's increases or even decreases in their attributes. It should not be the vehicle of how a guy regresses, or girl, let's be honest. I'm sure somebody's going to create an all-women's roster if they haven't already. In all honesty, I don't see any real breakout players. Guys play within the potential limits, and I think I have an idea of how much in terms of overall per year a player can progress, and that is about all they're willing to give. If a player happens to be better overall than their potential, the game does not like that, and that does not make sense. How about you give some cushion? Give a little bit of a cushion, depending on where said player is. If they are a D potential, and say their overall is better than their D potential, that D potential should have gone up, because as the player goes up, that potential should go up. It should be harder to go from a D to a C, from a C to a B, and a B to an A. And you are basically almost never going to see a player go from a D to a B, let alone a D to an A. It should be possible, but that player would probably have to train their behind off, put up the numbers at both the minors and in the majors in order to be like, all right, yo, the league really needs to catch on with this player. And that player obviously would be exceeding their potential in terms of statistics. I don't know what you got to do in terms of the math and the range to make that work, depending on each individual player. I'm sure y'all could figure it out. We are in the era of, the PS5, the Xbox, whatever number it is at this point. Switch probably can't handle it. I need this game on PC. You get this game on PC, believe me, I'm gonna have y'all right. Other than that, minor league players are just numbers until they get to the majors, which really isn't too surprising given how Major League Baseball really thinks of the minor leagues at this point in time. Quick glance at the free agents list. I just want to see the top and the bottom. We got Juan Soto at the top and Jonathan Loaizaga, a 72 overall, at the bottom. I come to find out there are more free agents. The problem is you won't really be able to see who they are. Juan Soto still at the top where he should be. You look at the bottom, there are a ton of players between the 72 overall Jonathan Loaizaga and who is that? Yoenis Manning, who sounds made up. He probably is a cat player, or a draftee of some sort. As again, I can't tell you what team he's on. I can't tell you what team he's on because I don't even know. I'd have to really look. Matter of fact, mind you, Yoenis is a 33 overall, 25-year-old free agent, but he's not sitting in the free agent pool. I scrolled through all the teams in the league, and I can promise you, this player is not there at all. Mind you, free agency literally just started, and you saw who the top was. You saw who the bottom was. I'm almost thinking it might be something along the lines of guys who have renewal contracts and they haven't signed them yet, so technically they're free agents, but I'm just not seeing it. Now, at first glance through this list, I honestly almost thought I was getting a preview of the draft, but that's not the case. These aren't guys who retired. They're not guys who are injured. It's just a list of dudes. It's very confusing as to where these guys even came from. And matter of fact, I'm trying to see if there are any guys who are of draft age. There are. Okay. They shouldn't be free agents. This guy really probably isn't a free agent. Now, this doesn't seem like a preview of the draft classes. It could be. Maybe I'll touch on that in a future episode, but again, lots of young dudes. There are some older ones. If you disengage with the 18 to 24 age range, it'll just show everybody who is a free agent. Yeah, there are secret guys that are free agents, but they'll never appear on the list. Back to the Juan Soto situation. I honestly feel this is too handholdy. I don't want to be told everything, and I understand why they might do this. I guess to try to get people to play franchise. There are a bunch of other things you could do besides literally handhold me all the way through trying to sign a guy on a contract. The sad thing is the CPU only seems to offer contracts once. So it's very easy to just wait for some offers to come in on a top player and then just snipe them. I want to see the CPU occasionally snipe me, for whatever their reasoning may be. Now, I know in free agency, a player will decide to go with another deal. Hell, they'll go with a deal that's lesser in total money than you have offered. In a previous rebuild, I signed a top player on a 2-year, like $80 million deal. Remember, 40 is the max you can sign anybody for. There were teams offering 6, 7, and 8, and 10-year contracts. I gave him 40 mil, which was the most I could give him. Any of the other teams could have done the same thing for a longer period of time, but CPU can only offer once. On one hand, I'm kind of okay with this. On the other hand, it's too easy. It makes things way too easy. Other things I find too easy, that interest meter has to go. It has to go. I understand it's supposed to make it so that, as you give the player what they want, it tells you, you fill it up, or you at least get it to green, you have a higher chance of actually acquiring said player. As stated earlier, I'm trying to recruit this player to come in. Where is the rumor mill, the team interest, the player interest? Again, that's stuff that should be happening really trade deadline and on through the rest of the year, because you know this guy's going to be free agent. Maybe their camp is going to put something out there, throw something on the ticker. I know this wouldn't work for people that just strictly simulate. I think that's their problem, but also right behind me, unfortunately, this inbox has become nothing but a DD notification screen, and it's complete BS. Ever since MLB the Show 22, or really 23, there is almost nothing in these inboxes that have anything to do with franchise, other than you might see the occasional trade that goes through, the one that goes through that you have either created or finished. There might be a, hey, this guy was on waivers, hey, this person won a specific award. Those are all well and good, but when a player is placed on waivers, there is no way to know. When a player is outright released, there is no way to know. I can understand trades not being something in the inbox per se, though it'd be nice to see, hey, this team is interested in your player. Maybe you want to go trade with them. Other than the trade block, because the trade block literally gets populated maybe a week or two after the season starts. How in the hell do you know who you want to trade, the CPU teams that is, before you even played your ace more than a third time through your rotation? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I jumped to a reliever for a specific reason. The roles are completely out of date. We have to get away from, let's be honest, there is going to be at least one reliever here that wants to be a closer. A ton of them end up wanting to be closers. All of you relievers cannot be closers. You just can't. I'm okay with relievers asking for more money. I'm okay with them wanting to be a closer. These roles are not specific enough. They need to be more along the lines of out of the park baseball. Depth, closer, bullpen. You're already in the bullpen. Depth? Are you a middle relief arm? Are you the second long reliever? Are you the closer? Is it a closer by committee? Do I want this guy to be out there specifically 7th inning, 2 outs against the lefty? Like, there are different ways to do this besides the current way the bullpen is constructed, which is absolutely too static, and it's just too static. Let's just say it like that and be respectful. Long relievers. First off, too many CPU teams have starters as their long relievers. It's almost like the CPU is allergic to signing relievers. I'm okay with a team having one guy, maybe two guys. They are designated as the relief pitcher / 6th, 7th starter. If Gallen gets hurt, boom, Bryce Jarvis ends up in the rotation. That's perfectly okay. I understand the Rockies are not all that talented in starting pitching, but they have 8 starters. In my 40-man rosters tips video and podcast, I've already pointed out that the CPU, once you get to the second season, some of them teams are going to be running with 9 and 10 starters. They are allergic to relief pitching. They will get starters. They value closers. Relief pitchers, they don't care. They don't build them up. They'll draft them, but they'll almost never play. They will literally almost never play. And it's kind of sad. One, you end up with too many guys who are starters in free agency in later years that they might be okay, but honestly, they've spent the majority of their career as relief pitchers. So what I've done, like in the Angels series, is I have taken it upon myself to, if I see a guy that is coming out of the bullpen a lot in the offseason, I will move them to relief pitcher. Particularly if they're an older guy, if they're like over 30 and they hadn't started that many games and they are on the decline and they aren't going to really recover from that, which is really subjective, I will make them relief pitchers to alleviate the CPU's thinking, if it even does that. As far as the contract interest, we have relics of the morale system that was nixed after MLB the Show 20 that we can't reasonably accommodate other than paying the player more. That was the biggest issue with morale. I'm going to specifically speak about morale in a future episode. Why it was kind of weird, why it kind of worked, and why we need it back in the game with some major tweaks to it. With contract structure, if I put it at either front load or back load, I would like to see a payout schedule. I need to know how much I'm paying this guy in the first year, in the last year, all points in between. How much is it going up in percentage? How much is it going down in percentage? So that, hey, I might end up in a rough year 2 of this contract where I'm like, guys are hurt. We're not doing anything. We don't have no minor leaguers. Soto is 28 or 29. This kind of plays into morale, and he just says, I want out of here. I want to be gone. Not after 1 year, after a couple years. It's a little understating. The team is not winning. The Rockies, why? Why did I sign with the Rockies? The latest MLB The Show update, 1.008. SDS had the audacity to state that Rule 5 eligible players on user-controlled teams will now be selected for Rule 5 draft if not protected when setting a 40-man roster. Guess what, SDS? The game was already doing that. CPU teams would already snatch up your Rule 5 players if you didn't put them on the 40-man roster and they may have had a spot. It says player cards will reflect Rule 5 draft eligibility. Guess what? It was already doing that. It was already doing that. To my left, Rule 5 eligibility. If a player was actually Rule 5 eligible, it would say it. Now, no one on your major league team is going to be Rule 5 eligible. It's going to be a AAA or AA player. Chase Dolander. Not on the 40-man roster. So, unless he's put on the 40-man roster, as he is, I want to say 4 or 5 years out of being drafted, being a professional baseball player. Professional meaning drafted and playing baseball for pay. He's eligible for the Rule 5 draft. Now, 9 times out of 10, hell, probably 99 times out of 100, the Rockies in the first year are going to protect him because he is a potential, he is a young enough player, and his overall is solid enough, if not good enough, to warrant being on the 40-man roster, even if they ain't going to call him up. Above my Chrome Dome, these are the players that could be lost in the Rule 5 draft if you don't protect them. When I click on select 40-man roster, I don't necessarily need you to show me the entire roster. I need you to somehow designate next to the player who is eligible. Just strictly who is eligible. I don't want to have to, like I've been having to do, or any of us have been having to do, scroll through all the players and annoyingly get to a major league player, and while you are already on the contract tab, you have to scroll back over. Come on, UX. This is UX, UI stuff. If I'm already on one tab that says one thing, I should be able to continue on that same tab, even if it may not align properly. Come on, y'all can get this together. Next to or in the 40-man roster, just put who is eligible. You could have a 40 next to their name. You could have a 5 next to their name. I don't care what the designation on a little square is next to it. As a matter of fact, I think if a player has more than one of those squares, it should show up. That's just me. If you check the transaction tab, which I'm going to simulate through free agency for a bit. I have no control over everything, so don't worry. And I'm not bothered by anybody getting signed. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not saving this, but stop your simulation at December 3rd. There are 3 important dates that the CPU and the user need to pay attention to. November 20th, which is the deadline for teams that have selected their 40-man roster. There is November 23rd, which is literally not that far from there, in which you have to at least offer a arbitration contract to a player, or else they become a free agent on December 2nd. And then there is literally December 2nd, where the tender contracts, which you can't see next to me, they are there. If you haven't offered a player, and they're usually minor league players, actually they are minor league players, if you haven't offered them a contract by December 2nd, you will lose them. They will become a free agent. That is how you would end up with a young-ish player who might be a minor leaguer. The team didn't put him on the 40-man. The team didn't do anything with him. You'll find this happening occasionally. I can't think of any specific ones right off the bat, but it happens a lot. And the CPU will always wait until the last possible minute. December 2nd, they make all their signings, all the guys they want to sign, all of them throughout the league. I'm not even going to show them all for every team, because we'd be here forever. As you can see, there are guys who did not get a tender contract. They are all free agents at this point in time. I think even if they're Rule 5 eligible. And then November 20th, again, guys that they purchased a contract of, they are on their 40-man roster. And as you can see, Coco Montes is one of the players that was designated for assignment. So he got removed from the 40-man roster, and these 2 guys ended up getting onto the 40-man roster. All this to say, it makes trading more of a hassle, because I might have 87 players in my organization by freaking Veterans Day. I've signed the free agents I think I'm going to sign. I don't really feel like I have anybody else that I want to sign. I've already re-upped on guys I want to come back, and they've all signed their contracts, all the minor leaguers. What a lot of user players do, which you'll see from other content creators, including myself, is basically the very first day of free agency, we are slogging along through that long list of tender contracts, of arbitration, offering basically 80, 85, 90, 95, 100% of the players to come back, or, they're going to sign it because they don't have a choice, to be honest with you. Unless you have offered an arbitration player a longer than 1 year deal, they may be like, I don't want that. And then they'll become a free agent. But if there's a player I want to move, you basically are rummaging through whatever the teams have available. You'll see a ton of teams where it says none, no contract, and there might be a player. Say I want Cedric Mullins, who you can't see behind my cranium. He hasn't signed his arbitration deal yet. Granted, arbitration until February. Anthony Santander. Somehow he actually resigned with the Orioles. 4-year deal. I'd say roughly $18 million, which even I think is low for a guy that actually has some values, got some pop, he can field a little bit. He seems to be going down. I'm a little surprised as to how or why he's going down when the season happened already. Ooh, I see. He is 2 years removed from a career high in home runs, from 33 to 13. Now, that makes sense for him to be getting less. I don't know if I would be signing a 4-year deal unless that money is solid enough and you've got an opt-out at, I don't know, maybe year 1, year 2. He's still a good player. If the player is aware of themselves and they aren't just thinking to themselves it's just a number, he knows he's a B potential. What that is, I don't know. It could be 87, it could be 89, it could be 80. Who knows? Unless you jump into the edit screen. But most B-level players, guys who are anywhere from, overall wise, 80 to maybe 89, those guys should be making at least double-digit money if their numbers are up to snuff. Why he'd sign a 4-year deal is really beyond me. That was 10 reasons why I think MLB The Show free agency sucks. If you agree or if you disagree, let me know down in the comment section. If you're listening to this audio on podcast, feel free to find my channel, State of the Franchise Gaming. It is the video version of this is always down in the show notes in the description.